Mom said it as a joke, her glass-raised voice sweet and sharp at the same time. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even miss you. Laughter exploded around the table, 20 people all pretending it was funny. The string lights above us flickered, catching the condensation on my untouched glass. I didn't laugh. I didn't move. I just watched my mother's smile stretch wider, waiting for someone, anyone to stop her. No one did. The air smelled like grilled chicken and cheap perfume. Every giggle felt like a pinprick under my skin. So I waited for the laughter to fade, for the night to turn quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat. That was the moment something inside me changed. The Monroe reunion always looked perfect from the outside. The kind of backyard gathering you'd see in a commercial grilled food linen dresses, wine glasses catching the golden hour light. Every summer without fail, Mom would plan it down to the minute. The guest list, the seating chart, even the playlist had her fingerprints all over it. She lived for this day, the one time of year she could prove to everyone, especially herself, that we were still a respectable family. And every year I showed up knowing exactly what role I was supposed to play, the distant daughter, polite but invisible. By the time I arrived that afternoon, the yard was already crowded. Aunt Cara was taking pictures of the food instead of eating it. Uncle Greg was loudly complaining about taxes, and Tyler, my brother, the golden boy, was surrounded by a group of cousins talking about his new job at a startup. I could already hear Mom's laugh cutting through the noise before I saw her. It wasn't real laughter. It was the kind that performed for the audience. "Eva, sweetheart," she said when she spotted me, arms open, smile bright enough to blind. I hugged her out of habit, catching the familiar scent of her expensive perfume, sweet, polished, suffocating. "You made it," she added, as if I'd crashed a party instead of attending the family reunion I'd been invited to since birth. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, "because that's what you say." Mom's eyes flicked over my simple black dress. She gave a faint smile, the kind that said you could have tried harder. "Still keeping it minimalist, I see," she murmured, and before I could respond, she was already turning to greet another guest. That was how it always was with her. No full sentences, just passing judgments wrapped in polite smiles. I found a seat at the far end of the table near the kids section where no one bothered to talk. I could hear bits of conversations floating across the lawn. Cara bragging about her daughter's new car, Greg talking about his boat, Tyler telling someone about the deal he just closed. My father, quiet as always, stood near the grill turning burgers and nodding at whatever Mom said. It should have been another harmless summer evening, but the tension was there like static before a storm. When I was younger, I used to wonder what I'd done to make her hate me so much. As I got older, I realized hate wasn't the right word. It was control. I was the only person she couldn't mold, the only one who didn't need her approval. And that, in her world, was the ultimate betrayal. At one point, Grandpa Will shuffled in through the side gate, cane tapping softly against the patio stones. His face was lined, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp to miss anything. When he reached me, he gave my hand a quick squeeze and whispered, "You holding up, kid?" I nodded. "You know how she gets." He chuckled low. "Oh, I know. Just remember there's more than one way to win a game." I didn't know what he meant then. Not yet. Dinner stretched on. The sky deepened from orange to a hazy blue. The smell of grilled chicken mixed with garden roses and the faint bitterness of wine. Mom floated from guest to guest, topping off glasses, complimenting outfits, laughing too loud. Her energy filled the space like perfume, pleasant to outsiders, toxic if you stayed too long. When dessert came out, she took her usual spot at the head of the table like a queen surveying her court. I just started to think maybe, just maybe, this year would pass quietly. No barbs, no jokes when she picked up her glass. And then came the line that cracked something open. If Eva disappeared tomorrow, she said, smiling at the crowd, no one would even notice. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then laughter erupted. I could see it travel around the table, the cousins chuckling. Greg nearly spilling his drink, Tyler smirking as if he didn't quite know whether to join in. Even my father gave a weary little chuckle, the sound of a man who'd long stopped trying to intervene. And me, I just sat there. The wine glass in my hand stayed perfectly still, my reflection trembling inside it. Mom's laughter echoed louder, almost triumphant, as if she'd scored a point no one else knew was being tallied. I didn't say a word, didn't move, didn't let my face break. Grandpa Will across the lawn caught my eye. His expression didn't change, but I could see the disappointment not at me, but at her. The moment passed quickly for everyone else. Someone cracked a joke, the conversation drifted, and the evening rolled on as if nothing had happened. But for me, the air had shifted. The sky felt colder, the laughter sharper. That sentence, "if you disappeared tomorrow," kept replaying in my head, looping like a song you hate, but can't stop hearing. It wasn't the first time she'd said something cruel. It was just the first time I finally stopped flinching. By the end of the night, when the last guests left, and Mom was busy collecting compliments about how perfect everything was, I stood alone under the string lights. The plates were half cleared, the music still playing softly. The world had gone quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the open kitchen window. That was when I realized the silence didn't hurt anymore. It felt like something new, something solid. And that meant she'd finally done it. She'd crossed the line I didn't even know I'd drawn. The joke wasn't funny, but it was the last one she'd ever make at my expense. The next morning, sunlight sliced through my blinds, sharp and merciless. I lay there for a while staring at the ceiling, replaying every laugh from the night before. It was almost funny how familiar humiliation had become, how predictable. For years, Mom's cruelty came disguised as comedy. She had a gift for it, weaponizing charm, turning other people's discomfort into her stage. I used to think it was unintentional, that she didn't realize how much those little jokes hurt. But last night, that wasn't thoughtless. That was deliberate. I made coffee, trying to shake off the heaviness in my chest. The kitchen was still littered with the aftermath of the reunion crumbs on the counter, a half-empty wine bottle in the sink, the faint smell of burned sugar from a pie no one finished. It felt like the residue of a performance that had gone on too long. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Grandpa Will. "If you're up, swing by. Bring your coffee. Porch is warm." I stared at it for a few seconds, then grabbed my mug and my keys. Grandpa's house was only 10 minutes away, tucked behind a row of old oaks at the edge of town. He'd lived there my whole life, in a place that smelled like books, pipe smoke, and something I could never quite name, safety maybe. He was already on the porch when I arrived, a blanket over his knees, the morning paper folded beside him. When he saw me, he gave that small, knowing smile of his. "Didn't sleep, huh?" "Barely." I sat beside him. The porch creaked under my weight. He sipped his tea. "She went too far this time. She always goes too far." Maybe he said, watching the wind stir the trees. "But you looked different last night. You didn't bite back. You didn't shrink either. You just watched." I exhaled. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. He nodded slowly. "Good. Because sometimes the best response is to let people reveal who they are without your help." We sat in silence for a while. The air smelled like pine and dew. Somewhere inside, a clock ticked faintly. Finally, he reached into the pocket of his cardigan and pulled out a small envelope, his handwriting looped neatly across the front for Eva. "When she's ready." He held it out. I was going to wait, but after last night, what is this? Something that might even the field a little. Keep it safe. Don't open it yet. Not until you know why you're opening it. I frowned. "You're being cryptic again." He chuckled. "Old habit. Just trust me." That was the thing about Grandpa. He never said more than he needed to, but he also never said anything he didn't mean. I slipped the envelope into my bag. "She'll hate that I was here. She'll hate anything that reminds her she doesn't control you," he said softly. "That's not your problem anymore." When I got home, the silence in my apartment felt different, not empty, focused. My mother's voice still echoed in my head, but now it sounded smaller, almost desperate. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the blank screen. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt curious. What would happen if I stopped absorbing her cruelty and started documenting it? Instead, I began scrolling through old emails, messages, even family photos. Every smiling picture was a record of something that came with a price, an insult, a guilt trip, a manipulation. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but instinct told me to keep going. Later that day, I stopped by my father's office under the pretense of dropping off some documents. He looked exhausted. Tie loosened, eyes red. When I mentioned Mom's joke, he sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. She just gets carried away, he said quietly. Dad, she humiliated me in front of the entire family. He flinched. I know. I should have said something. Why didn't you? He hesitated. Because it wouldn't have changed anything. She'd only find another way to twist it. That was the saddest part. He wasn't defending her. He was defeated by her. On the drive home, I realized something. Every person in our family played their role perfectly. Mom, the tyrant, Dad, the coward, Tyler, the chosen one, and me, the invisible scapegoat. The only way to break it was to step out of the script completely. That night, I lay awake staring at the envelope on my nightstand. I traced the edges with my fingers, tempted to tear it open. But I could still hear Grandpa's words. Not until you know why. I didn't know why yet, but I could feel it forming like a storm gathering behind my ribs. A few days passed. The online noise started trickling in Aunt Kara's inspirational Facebook post about forgiveness. Tyler posting a photo of Mom with a caption about family being everything. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I just watched. Because that was the pattern. She'd humiliate me, they'd rally around her, I'd defend myself, and somehow I'd become the villain. Not this time. Not when silence was finally working in my favor. Then one evening, I got another message, this time from an unknown number. You should have laughed when you had the chance. No name, no context, just that. I stared at it for a long time, heart hammering, then typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. That's when I checked my apartment door. The lock was fine, but the air felt wrong, like someone had been here breathing the same space. I turned on every light, checked every room, found nothing. But the unease stayed. The next morning, I found my front gate slightly ajar. Coincidence, maybe. Or maybe not. That's when I finally opened Grandpa's envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, his signature at the bottom, a legal header at the top, Last Will and Testament of William Monroe. And underlined near the middle, I leave my primary estate, including property and accounts, to my granddaughter, Eva Monroe. My breath caught. There was a sticky note attached in Grandpa's handwriting. She'll hate this. Don't let that stop you. I folded the paper back into the envelope, hands trembling not from fear, but something colder, sharper. I realized what the text had meant. You should have laughed when you had the chance. Because they wouldn't be laughing much longer, and for the first time in my life, that thought didn't scare me. It steadied me. The envelope sat on my desk like a loaded gun. Every time I passed by, my eyes caught the notary stamp, the neat black ink of Grandpa's signature, and the single sentence that would detonate everything my mother built her identity on. I didn't open it again that week. I didn't have to. Just knowing what was inside was enough to change the way I breathed. Mom texted me 2 days later. "Mom, let's move past last weekend. Okay. It was just a joke. Me. Sure. Mom. Good. Family should stick together. Me, absolutely." I stared at the bubbles on the screen, waiting for her next line, half expecting her to add something like, "You overreacted." But she didn't. That was worse. When Helen Monroe went quiet, it meant she was recalibrating. That silence didn't last long. By Thursday, Aunt Kara had posted a long, self-righteous paragraph on Facebook about certain family members manipulating an elderly man for financial gain. No names. Just a carefully worded accusation with a tone of heartbreak. Mom left a trail of crying emojis under it. Tyler commented, "People show their true colors when money's involved." It didn't take long before the rest of the family chimed in. Cousins, old neighbors, even one of Mom's church friends who'd always loved her grace. Every ping of my phone felt like static under my skin. I scrolled through hundreds of comments, every one of them a small cut. She always seemed so cold. She used to be such a nice girl. Poor Helen. She doesn't deserve this. I didn't reply. Instead, I screenshot everything and sent it to myself. Date, time, usernames, all filed neatly into a folder on my desktop titled Documentation. It was the same folder where I kept every email Mom had ever written that used words like ungrateful embarrassment or disappointment. Every text she'd sent reminding me that family comes first, right after tearing me down in public. I stopped crying around the third day. By then, the noise started to sound almost mechanical. They were running on autopilot gossip, pity, outrage, repeat. I'd been the scapegoat long enough to know the rhythm of their cruelty, so I learned to play along. When coworkers at the firm whispered about the Facebook drama, I smiled. "You know how families are," I said lightly. "We all have our versions of the truth." That calm, unnerved people more than any denial could. By Friday, I started noticing small oddities. My email password reset itself twice. My credit card company flagged an attempted charge from a boutique Mom loved. Then a message from the university's financial office hit my inbox: request to cancel tuition coverage for Tyler Monroe, submitted by Eva Monroe. My stomach turned. Within minutes, my phone rang. "Mom." "Are you out of your mind?" she hissed, skipping any greeting. "You think this is funny? You think ruining your brother's education will make you look like a saint? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb." "Eva, they called this morning. You tried to cancel Tyler's tuition coverage. I didn't contact them." "Oh, please." Her voice rose, venom disguised as outrage. "You've embarrassed this family enough. You think changing that will give you the right to destroy everyone else's life? I haven't done anything I said evenly, but maybe whoever did is just giving you a taste of your own game." She went silent. Then coldly, "Careful, Eva. You've already burned one bridge. Don't burn the rest." She hung up before I could answer. I stood there for a long moment, phone still in hand, pulse steady. Then I opened the documentation folder again. This time I created a new subfolder: countermoves. I started small, locked down every account, changed every password, called the university, explained that a fraudulent request had been made. The administrator apologized and flagged the incident. I could tell from her tone she'd already heard whispers. Next, I installed a new home security app: motion sensors, cloud backup, live notifications. It pinged every time a car passed, which was both annoying and comforting. That weekend, I drove back to Grandpa's. He was in his workshop sorting through old papers. When I told him what happened, he listened quietly, hands folded on the table. "They're getting desperate," he said finally. "Desperate people make sloppy choices. What should I do? Nothing rash. Let them keep thinking you're fragile. It'll make the truth louder when it finally speaks." He slid a brown envelope across the table. "Keep this one with the first." Inside were notarized transcripts of phone calls, conversations between Helen and Greg, discussing adjustments to Grandpa's accounts, plans to handle things before he gets any ideas. My throat tightened. "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" "Because timing is everything," he said simply. "And now, it's time." That night, I read every page, every timestamp. My mother's voice on paper, scheming, calculating, felt like proof of something I'd always known, but never been able to prove that I wasn't the problem. I was the obstacle. The next morning, I drove to Tyler's apartment. He opened the door, still half asleep, hoodie on, hair a mess. "Wow," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect you." "I bet." I stepped inside. "You should stop letting Mom use you as her mouthpiece." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're helping her dig a hole she's going to drag you into." He scoffed. "She's just trying to protect Grandpa. You're the one taking advantage." I handed him one of the transcripts. Read it. He skimmed the first lines, face paling, as his own name appeared: Mom telling Greg to use his university account as a contact reference for a forged loan document. "This isn't fake, it's notarized, Tyler. Grandpa had it recorded. Do you really think I'd go this far to make something up?" He didn't answer. "You've always believed her," I said softly, "because it was easier than admitting she's wrong. But that belief's going to cost you everything." I left the folder on his counter and walked out. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed again, another motion alert. Living room camera detected movement. I opened the app. The feed showed a hooded figure standing at my desk. 5 minutes later, they were gone. No forced entry, just a key. And there was only one person who'd ever had a copy: Tyler. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, I downloaded the clip, saved it to documentation, and sent a backup to my lawyer friend from college, just in case. That night, sitting in the dark, I realized how calm I felt. They thought I was cornered, but they didn't understand the difference between silence and surrender. I wasn't done. I was waiting for the laughter to die. And when it did, I'd deliver my one line. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mom, we're having a family dinner this weekend, just to clear the air." It wasn't a request. It never was. Mom's invitations were commands wrapped in courtesy. I stared at the text for a while, half smiling. Clear the air. That was her code for control, the narrative. I typed a single word back, sure. Then I called Grandpa. He didn't sound surprised. She's panicking, he said. That's when she makes mistakes. What do I bring? I asked. Just yourself, he said. Then after a pause, and the truth. Saturday came heavy with humidity. I parked down the block engine, off-hands resting on the steering wheel. For a moment, I watched the house through the windshield, the fairy lights, the freshly trimmed hedges, the same picture-perfect setting as the reunion night. Except this time, the quiet was wrong, staged, like a play waiting for its audience. I stepped out the gravel, crunching under my shoes, and the air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and smoke. When I rang the doorbell, it wasn't Mom who answered. It was Tyler. He looked tired, pale, eyes rimmed red like he hadn't slept. You shouldn't have come, he muttered. Then why did she invite me? He didn't answer, just moved aside to let me in. Inside the dining room was spotless table set with silverware, napkins folded, wine breathing in crystal glasses. Mom sat at the head of the table, pearls around her neck blouse, sky blue smile perfectly rehearsed. To her right sat Uncle Greg, already pretending he belonged somewhere else. Aunt Kara, quiet for once, scrolled her phone nervously. My father sat at the far end, hands clasped, eyes on the table. The tension was thick enough to taste. Eva, Mom said, rising just enough to kiss the air near my cheek. I'm glad you came. We've had misunderstandings lately. Is that what we're calling it? I said, sitting down across from her. She ignored the jab. We just want to move forward. No more hostility, no more gossip. Sounds healthy, I said. Tyler sat beside her, head down. I could see the tremor in his hand as he lifted his glass. Mom smiled at the mediator sitting quietly near the doorway, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a clipboard. We thought it would be good to have someone neutral present, Mom said smoothly, just to help us talk like a family again. I almost laughed. Sure, nothing says family love like a legal witness. Mom's jaw tightened for half a second. Then she smoothed it over with another smile. I just want to make sure my father's affairs are being handled properly. I'm concerned about the changes that were made to his will. There it was, the real reason. You mean the changes he made because you and Greg tried to forge loan documents under his name? I asked. Greg shifted uncomfortably. That's ridiculous. I reached into my bag and laid a folder on the table. The brown envelope with Grandpa's careful handwriting. I brought copies of those conversations, actually. Transcripts. Dated, notarized. Mom's fingers twitched. Eva, this isn't fake, I said. I thought you might say that. I slid another paper across the table. Here's the notary seal. Grandpa's lawyer verified it last week. The mediator adjusted her glasses, scanning the page. Mrs. Monroe, she said gently, these are quite serious claims. Mom's smile stayed frozen, but her knuckles whitened around the stem of her glass. My father was not in his right mind. He was confused, manipulated. Confused enough to record your phone calls, I asked, or to file a trust under an independent bank before the will was updated. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp assessing. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I reached into the folder again and pulled out the trust statement, the bank letterhead gleaming under the light. He wanted me to be independent, free from all of this. That's why he did it quietly, because he knew if you found out, you'd try to stop him. Eva, my father said softly, maybe this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, I said. My voice didn't rise, but it carried. You all wanted to clear the air. Fine. Here's the air unfiltered. The mediator glanced between us, clearly sensing the storm. Perhaps we should take a moment, but I wasn't done. You remember your joke, Mom, I asked, leaning back at the reunion. If Eva disappeared tomorrow, no one would even miss her. The room went still. I waited for the laughter to die, I continued, and I promised myself that when I finally spoke, I'd make sure no one ever forgot what you did. I tapped the folder lightly. This is my one line. Mom's breath hitched. Her smile cracked. Not a big break, just a flicker at first, like a glass fracturing under heat. Then it spread. You think this makes you the hero? She snapped. You've torn this family apart. No, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you use me as glue. Greg pushed his chair back. This is insane. We shouldn't even... Sit down, Mom barked, voice trembling now. For a long, unbearable moment, the room was nothing but silence and the faint buzz of the ceiling light. Then Mom turned to the mediator, voice suddenly soft again. "Do you see how ungrateful she is after everything we've done?" The mediator hesitated, then said gently, "Mrs. Monroe, I believe your daughter has evidence that warrants legal review. Perhaps continuing this meeting isn't productive." Mom's composure cracked completely. She slammed her glass down. "You think you've won? You're nothing without me. You've always been nothing," across the table. Dad finally spoke. Enough. It was quiet, but it sliced through the air. Everyone turned. He looked at her with eyes I'd never seen clear, exhausted, done. "You've been trying to control everyone so long you forgot what love looks like." For once, she didn't have a comeback. Her lips trembled, mascara smudging just slightly. "He was supposed to leave it all to me," she whispered. "He did," I said softly. "He left you the consequences." Her smile collapsed completely. No one made a sound. Tyler stared at the table. Greg stared at the floor, and Aunt Kara clutched her phone like it could save her. The mediator quietly gathered her notes, standing as if afraid to disturb the fragile silence. I took my time packing the folder back into my bag. The zipper sounded loud in the stillness. When I stood, I looked at each of them, Mom's pale face, Dad's quiet relief, Tyler's shame. "You all laughed that night," I said. "Now it's my turn." Then I walked out. The house was strangely bright sunlight hitting every spotless corner. Outside, the air felt lighter. I could hear birds, the hum of distant traffic. For the first time in years, the noise didn't feel like a threat. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed Grandpa's name. "You did it," he asked when I answered. "I did." A pause. Then his quiet chuckle. "Good. You handled it better than I ever did. I'm tired, Grandpa. I know, sweetheart. But now you can rest. They can't touch you anymore." I looked up at the house one last time. The curtains shifted in the upstairs window, Mom's silhouette small and still. I wasn't angry anymore, just empty, in a way that felt clean. Because the joke was finally over, and the silence that followed, it was mine. The fallout came quiet, not like a storm with thunder and drama, but like snow. Slow, relentless, covering everything. 3 days after that dinner, the Monroe family's digital life went dark. Mom deleted her Facebook. Aunt Kara's posts vanished overnight. Greg's business page rebranded under a new name. Different logo, same fraud investigation pending. Tyler's college email auto-replied. "This account is temporarily suspended pending review." No one called me. No one apologized. And that was fine, because I didn't need their words anymore. I had the silence, and for the first time, it was peace, not punishment. Grandpa called every evening that week. He didn't ask for details. He just checked in, like always. "How's the air up there?" he'd ask. "Smell cleaner." Yet. "It does," I told him, like rain after a fire. Dad stopped by once, a grocery bag in hand, pretending it was just to drop something off. He looked thinner, but lighter somehow. When I asked about Mom, his answer was simple. "She's gone to stay with her sister for a while. The lawyer said it's best we don't talk until things settle." "Do you think she'll ever change?" I asked. He stared out the window for a long time before shaking his head. "No. People like your mother don't change Eva. They just find new mirrors. But that's not your responsibility anymore." He left a few minutes later, but his words lingered heavy and freeing at the same time. The following week, Grandpa called again, this time with something in his voice. Relief, maybe even pride. "You've done what I couldn't," he said. "You stopped the cycle." "I didn't stop it," I said quietly. "I just stepped out of it." "That's the same thing," he replied. 2 months later, I packed up my apartment and moved north to Vermont. The cabin Grandpa always said would be mine sat by a lake so still it looked like glass. The first night there, I barely slept. It wasn't fear, it was disbelief. The quiet was so complete it felt like a new language I had to learn to speak. Mornings were slow. I'd wake to the sound of the creek and the smell of pine. The sun would slip through the blinds and scatter across the wooden floor. I started taking long walks, something I hadn't done in years, just letting the air fill my lungs without that familiar tightness in my chest. Some nights, I'd sit by the fire and reread Grandpa's letter, the one he'd hidden in Grandma's old jewelry box. The paper was thin, almost translucent from the years. His handwriting was shaky, but steady enough to carry weight. Eva, if you're reading this, it means you found your voice. Don't let them convince you peace requires permission. You've earned your silence. You've earned your freedom. Remember what they call betrayal? I call survival. Every line felt like it had been written for this exact moment. I folded it carefully and put it back in the box next to the string of Grandma's pearls. For a while, I just sat there tracing the grain of the wood, listening to the wind outside. The phone rang once that night. Dad again. I just wanted to say, "Thank you," he said. For what? For not becoming her. It was the kind of sentence that carried years of apology without ever saying the word. After we hung up, I went outside. The lake reflected the moonlight like silver. Somewhere in the woods, an owl called. Everything felt distant but alive, like I was finally standing at the edge of my own story instead of someone else's. A week later, I got a letter from the lawyer's office confirming the final settlement. The trust was secure, the property fully transferred. Grandpa had added a note at the bottom in his usual blunt style. They'll have to rebuild their lives the hard way now. That's fair. I smiled when I read it. Not out of triumph, just quiet understanding. I wasn't naive enough to think this was the end. Family doesn't vanish. It lingers, reshapes itself in whispers and memories. But what my mother had built control, performance, fear, it had finally cracked. Sometimes I caught myself wondering what she was doing, whether she hated me or pitied me. But then I'd remember the look on her face at that table the exact second her smile collapsed, and I knew it didn't matter. That look was the truth. Everything after was just aftermath. One morning, I drove into town for groceries. At the coffee shop, a stranger smiled at me and asked if I was new around here. For the first time in years, I said yes without feeling like a lie. Back at the cabin, the afternoon light filtered through the trees, golden and forgiving. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, and felt something I hadn't felt since childhood, quiet pride. Not for what I'd gained, but for what I'd refused to lose. The ability to be alone and unafraid. That night, I wrote a line in my journal, just one sentence. She tried to make me disappear. Instead, she disappeared from the story, and maybe that was enough justice for one lifetime. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It doesn't come with slammed doors or broken glass. Sometimes it's just the quiet that follows when you stop explaining yourself. 2 months ago, I sat at a table surrounded by laughter that wasn't real and people who didn't see me. Now I wake up to the sound of water against the dock and the wind moving through the pines. No noise, no performance, no need to prove anything. The world didn't collapse when I walked away. It got smaller, calmer, truer. And maybe that's what real revenge looks like, not destruction, but distance. Not fire, but freedom. If you've ever been the one they laughed at, the one they dismissed, the one they thought would never stand up, listen to me. You don't have to fight to be heard. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave. And when you do leave, completely. Because peace isn't something they give you. It's something you take back. If this story hits somewhere deep for you, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. You're not alone. Hit subscribe and I'll tell you more stories about the quiet kind of revenge.